your EAL team, there are 6 consultants. Each of us have in our portfolios about 20 to 25 schools, and we also have areas of focus that are divisional focuses from kindergarten through to grade 12. Our supervisor is Sonia Stapleton, and our director is Holly Sheely. Gathering here today, we are learning and strengthening our knowledge of how to best support the success of students as we reflect on strategies, tools, and resources that support our ELLs. Joining us today also speaks to your professionalism and dedication to best serving and supporting your culturally and linguistically diverse students. As teachers in Alberta, this is our responsibility as we are mandated by the teaching quality standards to provide appropriate programming that supports student success. Okay, for today's targets, we have 4 that we're going to talk about and kind of walk through. And so we're going to be looking at building background knowledge, leveraging home language, vocabulary instruction and what that might look like in your content area classrooms, as well as using strategies and resources such as sentence frames, word banks, and visuals through Microsoft CoPilot. All right, so looking at background knowledge, when looking at ways to remove the barriers that we might be unintentionally creating in our classrooms, we need to look really deeply into our instruction. And that needs to be part of our practice throughout every stage of the planning process into the execution of our lessons as well. And we do really need to remember that our culturally and linguistically diverse students come to us with prior knowledge and experiences that we do want to celebrate and honor in our classrooms. Many will come to us having taken part in formal schooling in their home country prior to entering our classrooms. And in order to help our students better understand the content that you are teaching in your classroom, it really is beneficial to start our lessons by accessing students' prior knowledge, which gives them an opportunity to really make connections between their past learning and the new content that is being taught within your classroom. If we do notice a gap in understanding, it then informs us as to how we can best support building up that background knowledge for the student, the information that they may need to really successfully connect with and engage with the content within your classroom and the material that you are providing them with. So as you are reflecting on your practice, one thing to consider is, am I accessing students' prior knowledge, as I mentioned, on the content that I am presenting? At the beginning of a unit, something that you might decide to do, or even at the beginning of a lesson, is plan an activity that will help you formatively assess what a student's background knowledge and vocabulary on a subject is. If you do notice that the student is lacking background knowledge, some aspect that might help them to really enhance their knowledge base on the topic, this would really give you an opportunity to understand what might I need to front load before kind of diving really deep into the lesson in order for that connection to be made. It's a great time to, encourage students to use their home language as well to make connections, because as I mentioned, they may have conceptual understanding of the topic that you are teaching just based on whether or not they did have formal schooling and what that curriculum looked like. And really all they're looking for and need is that language bridge. You may start with a few examples that we have here with a sort. And that you can see in the T chart on the screen here. When starting a unit about sports, for example, ask students to sort pictures of sports into summer and winter sports, maybe even sports that they engaged with a lot in their home country or that were popular in their home country, and then including those that are more culturally connected to life in North America and in Calgary specifically. A lot can be learned as you watch your students sort and interact with the picture cards that you might be using. You can even listen in on vocabulary and language and the ways in which they are discussing the sentences, their cohesive devices that they might be using as well. So a lot of this activity, the talk time around it, the way in which the sorting is happening really gives you an understanding of a variety of aspects of who that student is, what their learner profile might look like as well. A KW L chart is also a great graphic organizer where students can work in collaboration to write about what they know about the topic, what they want to know, and once the lesson or unit has been completed, writing about what they learned. This again, with the use of potential sentence frames and modeling from yourself and facilitation from yourself, really supports that growth in language for the listening and speaking strands, as well as the writing and reading strands in this case too. You'll see in the top right-hand corner is an example of an alpha box, and we have these available through the EAL department. And they're just a really great way to brainstorm vocabulary and really identify for yourself too what vocabulary you might need, as I mentioned, to front load in order for students to really connect. But also it gives opportunity for students who have literacy in home language to write some of the language connected to the theme or the unit in home language as well. And always thinking about the opportunities that we are creating to promote that student talk time. So all of these activities, though they can be sorting or writing, or you know opportunities where they're maybe on the bottom left-hand corner, they're selecting one and thinking through which they would rather have as a pet. Um, then providing them with the scaffolds needed to discuss in that academic way and modeling it for students provides them with those opportunities to share and share in a safe way, in a supported way in your classroom. So another way to build background knowledge, a really effective way and quick way is to include visuals. This adds clarity and it provides a quick connection to the topic that your students are engaging in. By bringing up images, it also does show a quick or a clip that you might be pulling out from YouTube or online somewhere. You do provide students with the most accurate description of what it is that you are talking about. Take for example, the image or the question that's being asked. It talks about loonies. It talks about, so this is talking about some of the math problems that students would be working with. For some of our newcomers or those that are newer to English, the word loony, for example, may not be something that they are familiar with. When they think of loon, maybe they would have heard that in previous conversations or previous classes, and again, are not sure how a loon, which is an animal, would connect necessarily to this math problem. And so this is a great opportunity to connect that cultural background piece for your students by quickly showing an image. A loon is this animal. However, in Canada, we call a dollar coin a loonie because it does have a loon on it. Then from there, the $2 coin is called a toonie, which is the combination of two and loony. So this is something that maybe we take for granted as teachers in North America, teaching to our students who are native English speakers and have also grown up in the culture of Canada. But it is something that we really have to be mindful of because it could be something that a EAL student would be kind of derailed from what their focus should be. So their focus here would need to be looking at the math and, identifying the strategies that they need to work through in order to solve a problem, but they're kind of, focused in on what is the understanding of the actual word problem and what it's actually asking us. So that's just something to keep in mind. And on the next slide here, there's just another couple of examples, and we picked math because that oftentimes is the feedback we're getting from teachers is, many of our EALs, math can be universal and the numbers are not assigned to specific languages, they understand that. And that is true to an extent. But when it does come down to math problems and problem solving, we need to be really mindful that that is and can be quite language heavy and can be heavy in cultural connections as well. So here, taken from elementary and the bottom question taken from junior high, are math problems where you do really need to have an understanding of background knowledge around, for the first one, what is a snowman? How do you build a snowman? What might you need to build a snowman? And for the second question here, in fact, you don't even have to be an EAL student to kind of be derailed by this one and this being a barrier. You just could also be someone who's not very experienced with different equipment and tools that are used in different sports, like myself. So the question at the bottom does say, during a football practice, a player does 168 kilojoules of work while pushing a sled a distance of 250 meters. And so we're trying to figure out the energy here, or the force that was needed to push the sled. First off, though, something that might derail a EAL student is the word football. Many might presume that you're referring to soccer, which in most parts of the world is called football outside of North America. And then even if they did, if you were able to show a quick clip of, what we mean in this one is not soccer, we mean American football. Also, the word sled. I mean, for myself too, I didn't know that this thing that the football players are pushing is a sled. My first thought that came to mind was like a toboggan. So that's another piece that a quick image can really help them kind of really understand, okay, what is the problem I'm working with here? And you know what, putting that piece aside, and now that I see what it is they're doing, I can actually work through the math problem and provide, or the science problem, and provide that answer. Okay, so our next target we're going to move into is leveraging home language. We have a couple quotes here that really stood out for us and were important, because we do have such diversity throughout our district, with so many languages being spoken, so many home countries that kiddos are coming from, and such amount of expertise and experience and lived experiences that these students are bringing with them. But we did want to, I'll read these out first and then kind of talk to them. When children enter the door of a school, they bring with them all of who they are, lived experiences and rich backgrounds. A significantly important part of their identity is the language spoken at home, a valuable resource that connects them to family and can lead to a positive self-concept and educational success if promoted in school. And the next quote that we identified was, there is no empirical research showing that banning L1, which is their first language, from the learning context is beneficial, although there is evidence prohibiting its use can be detrimental. So many of our EALs within our district have proficiency in not one, but multiple languages. And for many, they connect to their environments, their peers, families, and different experiences using different languages. In fact, some of the students from our previous ELD classes had shared that, they think in one language while they dream, they learn, and they feel in other languages. And we really want to honor the identity of our students and celebrate the strength that the diversity that their journeys and who they are bring to our classrooms and those learning environments that they are a part of. So looking at home language and what it can do. It can help make input comprehensible, building context, understanding vocabulary, and being able to read text. It helps with fostering social interactions. That would be working collaboratively, communicating opinions, and thinking metacognitively, and kind of working through those processes as well. And finally, it supports expressive language, which would also work towards enhancing writing text, learning grammar, and talking in order to learn. So in programming for our EALs, it is important to develop comprehensible input in order to enable them to understand and engage with the curriculum being taught in the classroom. And comprehensible input is making what you are teaching and the information you are presenting to students understandable in different ways, however that might be, with the different strategies and tools that we are going to speak to as well today. Teachers would support EALs by giving them opportunities, in this case, to view resources in the home language that are related to the topic, maybe translating content-specific vocabulary to their home language. And again, you may have students in your class coming from a variety of home countries with, many, many languages in your classroom. You do not necessarily have to be the expert in all these languages. Welcome your students into that. Encourage them to be a part of building that language connection as well. And finally, teachers can make annotations using home language. Sorry, not teachers. Students can make annotations using home language within their notes and within connections that are being even handouts or worksheets or workbooks that they're working through. Maybe doing that first in home language or making little notes that add, additional understanding for them in home language as well would be really great opportunities. In the next couple of slides, we'll just showcase a few resources and tools we have within the district as well. So these are our dual language dictionaries. They are available through IMC. You may have some in your school already, and they do come in a variety of languages. They do go through, they're beautiful because they are these picture dictionaries, and they're very much connected to school, community, and, the experiences of kiddos within school as well. So very relatable for our students. You also can provide students, looking at the next page here, or the next slide rather, with personal dictionaries. So this is something, we do have templates for this on our APD site, and connected to that is our EAL website. And with these, this would be a great way to really enhance their vocabulary, but again, making connections to their home language and to what they already know, and how that connects really meaningfully to what is happening in the classroom too. So this is something that students who do have literacy in their home language can create themselves. They could add pictures to help them with that understanding as well. Another beautiful example from the classrooms within our district are multilingual and bilingual word walls. So again, these can be word walls that are created in collaboration with your students. Certainly you can print off a few. We have some really great translating tools that can help you with that. And Kim will be chatting to a CoPilot later, which might also be able to support you in a little bit of this. However, I would turn to your students and their families to be able to see how can we welcome them into the learning environment and help them be a part of that team as well. For our older kiddos, and actually even in Div 1 and 2, if you are presenting students with video clips, online learning opportunities from YouTube, for instance, what you might consider is also turning on subtitles, again, if they have literacy in their home language, and changing those subtitles to their home language. We do have a how-to on our EPD site of how to make that change. There are several languages available through YouTube. And this is a great way to support students in leveraging that home language, making connections and helping them build their understanding and vocabulary and their proficiency overall in English as well, because it is connecting what they know to what they are learning, along with hearing the sounds as well spoken in the video, hearing what that word sounds like based on what it looks like, and having it modeled for them. There are other resources available as well for different age levels and grade levels. One that we do use is Unite for Literacy. This website does offer a collection of stories with over 50 languages available, and there is narration available as well. So it does help students with, again, hearing the English. It can also read it out in home language. This is also a great way that, again, you can invite families into the classroom, into that learning team. Having students access these at home helps with parents too, who are wanting to learn alongside their child this new language, while still maintaining and growing in their home language. Okay, in programming for our ELLs, it's also important to support them in expressing their ideas in order to provide them with opportunities and tools to share their opinions and ideas on different topics in your content area classes, so they know and that they feel that they're a valuable part of the learning environment. Teachers would support ELs in giving them opportunities to brainstorm and draft in home languages before maybe writing in English, opportunities to compare language patterns in English to their home language. And I'll take a look at that on the next slide once I mention this last piece here. Also using their home language to process through new information or construct meaning. So here you see an example of the same sentence written in different languages, translated through different languages. And it's really important to be mindful of the home language spoken by your student and what that literacy looks like. It's important to note their level of literacy as well, and to note sort of their understanding of language constructs because they can differ quite greatly from English. If we take, for examples, our kiddos who speak Tigrinya, when looking at Tigrinya written, those characters are very different than English characters. The sound blends are very different as well. So keeping that in mind would really give you a better understanding as the educator as to might learning English and the phonological awareness and some of that morphology be a little bit more challenging for certain kids over others too. So just something to keep in mind and really understanding how it can differ quite greatly. A strategy we really like to use in many of our schools from elementary up to high school are using is our FRAIR model. And with our FRAIR model, this graphic organizer does help you to build background knowledge as well as English vocabulary. And it allows students to incorporate their home language as well to really make those connections within their brain and that contextual understanding to home language and what they have previously learned. So you can see here that in one FRAIR model, we do have the English word. We have it written in multiple languages, as well as a visual representation, and then even the student-friendly definition that was created by the student in home languages and English, and then vocabulary in context. So again, really connecting to the content as well so that it supports them in working through what you are teaching in your classroom. Looking here too is just an example of a student who did kind of do that translanguaging within an assignment that was she worked through, was able to write predominantly in English, but did include home language in areas that it really would showcase the depth of the writing, the feeling and the emotion of what she wanted to express. And that certainly is what allows students to showcase who they are, what their journey has been, and where they come from, is being able to incorporate their culture and their language into our classrooms as well. Finally, in programming for our EALs, it's important to foster social interactions in order to support students to connecting to the curriculum and more importantly, even connecting to other members of their learning team. And so as teachers, what we can do is have EALs reflect on their learning with others who speak the same language. Keep in mind that many of our EALs, it's such a heavy cognitive load through the day that they are taking in information in English. They're needing to translate it, process that, and then work through it in order to understand it, maybe write it down, think through it in home language, and then translate it again to speak it out. So it's a lot of heaviness that they're working through at the end of the day. Many of them are very exhausted. And so this gives them an opportunity to think freely, talk freely, and have that little bit of lessened load. And they may be able to go in further depth with home language, which will then be supported and facilitated by yourself, maybe by the team they're working in, to kind of connect to English as well. Another piece is allowing EALs to solve problems with same language peers when appropriate, of course, and permitting EALs to form and support their opinions using home language. Again, like I said, many of our ELD students did mention to us that, we think in a different language than we have to speak and learn in class, but also, in sometimes how we dream is completely different than how we speak to others as well. So it's just a very interesting and beautiful thing that multilingual learners and who are proficient in so many languages have the ability to do. In the next slide, this just kind of breaks down how classroom participation and interactions can be supported with leveraging home language. And so looking at within groups, you could group students so they can use both languages in small groups and then present in the second language, that being English, to the whole class or within, smaller groups that they are presenting to. You could assign newcomers a buddy to show them around school and answer questions. That, again, gives them that opportunity to connect and allow students to discuss the lessons and ideas with a partner in home language, and then, of course, in their second language as well. And finally here, this is a slide that we've shown often, and it's interesting to look at, but it's very true of many of our EAL students, is that it can be, like I said, quite frustrating and overwhelming and tiring because they are working through that cognitive load. But many of them have a lot that they can share and so many gifts that they can present to us through their experiences, the knowledge they have gathered, and then the languages and culture that they have as part of who they are, that we sometimes take that for granted because they can't showcase it in as much depth as they can in home language as they do in English. So just encouraging teachers to support students and welcome students who are English language learners to really utilize their home language, help it to connect to their prior knowledge and to building background knowledge of different context and area and content that you're presenting in the classroom to really help build understanding of what they're going to be growing in within your classroom. And right now I'm going to pass it along to Kim, and she's going to work through the next targets here.
Awesome. Thank you, Stacey, for taking us through the first part. I know we are quite close to that time, so I will do my best to go over, but if you do have to leave, please don't hesitate. This will be recorded. So today I'm going to be talking a little bit about vocabulary instruction. I'm sure you've heard it from our team quite a bit, but the idea that, I love this quote from Kate Kinsella, academic English is not a natural language. It must be explicitly taught, not merely caught. And so really we need to get into a habit as teachers to be very explicit in our instruction of vocabulary. So when we think about vocabulary, it goes into our 3 tiers. And so tier 1 is kind of like that social conversation language. Tier 3 is really that subject-specific vocabulary. And then finally, we have our Tier 2 vocabulary, where is that academic, across the curriculum vocabulary. And Tier 1 really is the students are going to learn this by interacting with their students in the hallways, in your classrooms, through those talk time activities, for example. Tier 3 teachers are rock stars. We explicitly teach our vocabulary for our content areas. We are fantastic at this. But the Tier 2 is really where we want to be more explicit and really focus our instruction on. But what is Tier 2? So Tier 2 vocabulary is transition words like because or although. They are multi-meaning words like I'm sitting at a table or I'm going to table that discussion. Information processing words. I like to call these PAT words. So words like illustrate and formulate. Often we find our students know the content area, they understand and they know the answer, but they get stuck on these tier 2 information processing words. And then finally, concept words. So concept words are words that go across the curriculum like cycle, for example. So When you are thinking about tier 2 vocabulary that you want to teach in your classroom, we do have for elementary some sample lists. But really, I think no matter what teacher you are, K to 12, if that word is important and is coming up in the classroom, it's really important to be explicitly teaching it. These lists are fantastic to kind of give you an idea so that you kind of know if you're on the right track. But honestly, if it's something that's coming up in the classroom, it's important. It's impacting the meaning of the content that you are teaching in the classroom, then it is really important that we are explicitly teaching this. And this is why. When we teach and we are very explicit in our instruction of tier 2 vocabulary, we're helping to build background knowledge. We're strengthening word recognition and spelling. We're helping our students to develop richer and deeper vocabulary that's really going to improve their comprehension and their writing. And then they're able to look at words and transfer those understanding to unknown words when they see them. Now, when we're thinking about vocabulary instruction, yes, we want to be explicit. And so Kate Kinsella has this instruction sequence. And I like to kind of put it into 4 acronyms. We want to see it, we want to say it, we want to sort it, and we want to spell it. And so let's show the students the word. Write it up on the board so that they can see it. Pronounce every part of that word. Have them repeat the word back to you. Clarify the parts of the speech. Give synonyms, antonyms, and explanations. Provide a visual representation of that word, and then you can assess their students' comprehension. So really, you want to see it, you want to say it, you want to sort it, and you want to spell it. One of the most important things for me, myself, is we want to make it also fun. And you want to get curious and be a student with your students. So if you are come to a tier 2 word that you are exploring with your students, get curious and go on to etymology.com and find out the origin of the word. Use word inquiry tools. So these are a couple of ideas. I'm going to show you the first 3. So the word webs, the Frere model, and the word mapping, but there are tons more. And if you would like to learn more about them, please reach out to me. But the example of taking a word web, so you put the tier 2 word in the middle, and then you add suffixes and prefixes and create other different words. Word mapping, where you're really deciphering and looking at the roots and the prefix and the suffixes and how they have meanings. So you can see, for example, if you took the word graph and then you add it somewhere in your math content area, then you're starting to add a prefix or suffix. They are developing that deeper vocabulary and able to transfer that meaning. And again, there's always that idea of having those visuals so that we can provide that for our students. And of course, the sentences. Stacy has already kind of talked about this, but the Frere model. And so the idea of where you put the word in the middle and then you can come up with either a definition or characteristics of the word or just a picture if that's where that student is at, how they would say it in their home language. And now for this example, it's in the family and not in the family. So we're looking at those prefixes and suffixes versus just a rhyming word. Another great way to have fun with our vocabulary is to connect it to the text that we are already using in the classroom, our mentor text. So for example, I know in elementary, we have the Empowering Writers resources, and they have a mentor list that they use for all of their writing lessons. So this is a great way to kind of use those mentor texts in our classrooms. Engage with the page. So if you just Google engage with the page, it's a free website for everyone. It's a fantastic resource where they actually take mentor text and take the words and actually give you tier 2 vocabulary activities that you can do in the classroom. So for example, all around us, they have the circle, and then they have all these different activities you can do with the circle. They have an interactive building bases board where you can actually put the word up and play with your students and see how when you add the prefixes and suffixes, it changes the meaning of the word. So I've already talked and hinted about this, but making it fun. So we've been curious with our students, but let's make it fun as well. I love this game. It's called Deserted Island. So you take a word, either it could be a spelling pattern or a tier two vocabulary word that you are using. Have it in your head. You're going to write it down on the board. And then the students, you're going to say, I'm going to a deserted island and I'm going to bring, let's say, I'm going to bring cheese. And so they have to try and guess what is my spelling pattern, for example, for this one that I'm using. So I have the ch sound. So if somebody told me they are bringing spaghetti, I'd say, no, sorry, you can't come to the deserted island. But if somebody said, I'm going to bring chalk, then yes, and then I'd write the word underneath. Such a fun, engaging, quick game you can play with the kids, even if you're lined up and ready to go and there's 5 minutes to the bell. If you have technology in the classroom, things like Kahoot and WordWall, if you just search in Tier 2 vocabulary, they have tons of games already ready-made for you. You, of course, can make your own, but they're already there for you and ready to go. For our K to 6 teachers, there are some vocabulary games already created for you to support that Tier 2 vocabulary. Finally, I really encourage you to build a living word wall. Cece had already talked about having that home language with the words, but even having it up with the students, creating it with the visuals. You could do it by unit, but it's just such a great way for students to visually see it and interact and really give them the ownership over their learning. So the final thing that I'm going to talk about today is sentence frames, word banks, and visuals. So I don't know about you, but when I was teaching, it felt daunting to think, okay, I have to get all of these things up. I need a sentence frame, I need these visuals, I need a word banks. And so it can feel very overwhelming. So I'm hoping this resource is really going to support you and make it a lot easier for you. And again, we're talking about our EAL students, but this is great for all of your students. So Microsoft CoPilot is actually paid through our district. So when you go onto the app, you will sign in through your work email. So there's my work email there. And then it gives you, I believe it's about 30 free prompts. I know the team and I were using it and we never went over our 30 in the day. So go wild. And so what you do is I put in a prompt. I said, create a range of sentence starters for an elementary student writing about, and for example, this one was winter. It was right there for me. So I'm ready. I could put that up on the board. Word banks. You could just put in the prompt, create a word bank for an elementary student writing about, and for example, I did winter, and this one even went into the weather, the nature, activities. It really put it all into the different categories. Then finally, visuals. So we did some of with our collection evidence website, we created some AI generated images, and this is how we did it. So we went on, again, put on the prompt, create a realistic image of elementary students playing outside in the winter. Isn't this a fantastic visual where you can really incorporate some of these talk times, talk about some of that tier two vocabulary? It's really endless. So I'm hoping this is kind of a, I know this was a quick snapshot of Microsoft Copilot. I am going to create like a 10-minute bite-sized PG video on this, but do go look on that Microsoft Copilot because it is really a handy dandy friend for you and it will really I'm hoping it will help to simplify that word banks and sentence frames that we should be using in our classroom to support our EAL students. Just wanted to do a big shout out to Rebecca has been working our EA consultant on our newsletter. She did a fantastic job. This was sent out for our December issue. If you scan that, you can see all of our past issues. And of course, you can also join. We send it out every month. We have some fantastic, just little information about a country of the month. We have some books on there, upcoming PG, and anything that's kind of related. So, for example, this issue was about progress reports. And so please do, if you would like to be added, scan that QR code or just send us an email and we'll get you all set up. Can't believe it. We are almost at the end of this year, but we do have some upcoming PGs in our new year. So January 15th, we are going to do part 4 of 6th EAL series. So this is going to be on talk time. And just a reminder that January 31st is the due date for the collection of evidence of your one strand. And then, of course, you are going to update the strands of the benchmarks. So just as I am going to now stop our recording, we would love to have your feedback on what you want to, what got you excited today about the PG that you want to try in the classroom. Bud, maybe something you'd like to learn a little bit more about. And then a thorn, something you are still kind of wondering about. So you can put that in the chat, or you could unmute yourself. I'm just going to stop our recording.